Dearest viewers, something incredible is happening in Russia right now. Teacher, I must visit Singapore next year. Me too. Almost everyone in our class is learning Mandarin. Moscow International High School No. 12 has been completely abuzz. Last winter, 25 female students on an educational trip to Japan unexpectedly made an emergency landing at Changi Airport, Singapore, due to an unforeseen incident. Although they only spent a mere 24 hours on Singaporean soil, this brief period completely transformed the lives of these 25 students. After returning home, a video posted by one of the students on TK garnered over 1 million views in just 3 days. 8 major Russian media outlets reported on the emergency. Petitions from parents flooded in, demanding that the next school trip absolutely had to be to Singapore. What was even more astonishing was the change within the school. The number of applications for Mandarin language courses tripled, and the waiting list for the Singaporean Culture Club exceeded 200 people. What exactly happened during those 24 hours? Why did an unexpected emergency landing lead to such a profound change in these teenage girls? Now, let's hear the impactful story from the tour leader, Miss Yelena Petrovna, who witnessed that day firsthand. Before we begin, please like and subscribe to our channel to motivate us to introduce more stories about Singapore. Hello everyone, I am Yelena Petrovna. I have been teaching geography and history at Moscow International High School, No. 12, for 25 years. I want to share with you one of the most unforgettable moments in my teaching career. It was a cultural visit to Tokyo with 25 11th grade female students. After a week-long itinerary, as we boarded the plane back to Moscow, I initially thought it would be just another ordinary return flight. About 4 hours after takeoff, the captain's announcement echoed through the cabin. The message was, due to heavy snow over Moscow, the plane could not land and had to make an emergency landing at the nearest major international airport, Changi International Airport in Singapore. The students' faces were filled with apprehension. And so, we headed to Changi International Airport. Honestly, I knew almost nothing about Singapore, only that it was a small island on the map. At 2 o'clock in the morning, the plane's wheels touched the runway. From the moment the aircraft door opened and we stepped onto the aerobridge, the surprises began. 6 airport staff were already waiting for us. Despite the late hour, they were dressed in neat uniforms, wearing gentle smiles. One of them explained the situation in fluent English. They informed us that we would need to stay at the airport for approximately 24 hours until the weather in Moscow improved. The airline would provide meals and a simple city tour of Singapore. Although the situation was unexpected, the calm demeanor of the staff greatly reassured us. While going through immigration, I looked around. The airport floor gleamed like a mirror. Even in the middle of the night, there wasn't a speck of dust or dirt to be seen. It's worth noting that Moscow's airport, even during the day, has many areas that are poorly maintained. The ceilings were incredibly high and bright, completely devoid of the dark, oppressive feeling often found in subway stations. As we collected our luggage and looked at the electronic display board, I was once again astonished. It showed instructions in 6 languages simultaneously. Not just English and Mandarin, but also Japanese, and even Russian was clearly displayed. The moment they saw the Russian sign, several students looked visibly relieved. In a foreign country, seeing one's native language provided more comfort than we had imagined. Exiting the gate, the airline staff led us to a resting area set up inside the airport. Upon arrival, we found clean sofas and blankets prepared, and there were even shower facilities. The students were already exhausted from the long flight, so such thoughtful arrangements were truly appreciated. However, some students couldn't sleep. A few said they were hungry. I checked my watch. It was 3 in the morning. I wondered if we could buy food at this hour. In Russia, this would be impossible. But the staff informed us that there were 24-hour convenience stores and restaurants throughout the airport. I could hardly believe it. I took 5 students to a convenience store. The moment we pushed open the door and stepped inside, all of us widened our eyes. Even at 3 in the morning, the store was as bright and clean as a department store. The shelves were fully stocked with products, and the fresh food section neatly displayed items like sushi and sandwiches. What was even more surprising was a young female staff member, approximately 25 years old, standing alone at the counter. Working alone in the middle of the night, she showed no signs of apprehension. Instead, her expression was calm and cheerful. Upon seeing us, she flashed a radiant smile and exclaimed, "Welcome." This was an unimaginable sight in Moscow. In Moscow, after 11 p.m., it's rare for women to work alone due to safety concerns. It's usually standard practice to have male employees working alongside. Yet, here, at 3 in the morning, a young woman was confidently and naturally working by herself. The students picked out all sorts of things. There were exotic foods like sushi rolls and dumplings. There were dozens of types of instant noodles. The beverage section was also impressive. After discovering a unique product called papaya milk, the students found it quite magical and grabbed several bottles. When checking out, the prices were surprisingly low. 6 of us bought snacks and drinks for a total of only about SGD 25. Converted to Russian currency, it would be around 1,500 rubles. In a Moscow airport convenience store, it would easily be double that amount. While packing our items, the staff member friendly asked, "Did you enjoy your trip?" Even though she knew we were foreigners, she showed no sign of annoyance or indifference. Instead, she initiated conversation, and her thoughtful demeanor left a lasting impression. On the way back from the convenience store to the resting area, we walked along the corridor. The floor was truly spotless. Even late at night, cleaning staff were quietly wiping the floors. Seeing us, they gently moved aside, gesturing for us to pass first. Noticing the restroom sign, I went in to take a look. I truly couldn't believe an airport restroom could be so clean. Not only the toilets but also the mirrors above the wash basins were sparkling. Some even had bidets. Toilet paper was abundant, and soap and hand dryers were all in working order. The restrooms at Moscow's airport, even during the day, are not very well maintained. Toilet paper often runs out, and wash basins are frequently wet. But here, even at 3 in the morning, everything was impeccably managed. Back in the resting area, I shared snacks with the students. The children, trying sushi for the first time, couldn't stop exclaiming, "It's so delicious! How can rice, seaweed, and filling harmonize so perfectly?" They seemed truly amazed. Looking out the window, the airport was still brightly lit. Even in the middle of the night, people were coming and going, and shops were open. The entire city seemed not to sleep, still alive and bustling. It was then that I suddenly realized that everything we were experiencing right now was not something to be taken for granted. A society that remains safe and clean in the middle of the night, where all systems function normally. How much effort must it take to build such a society? The students seemed to have similar thoughts, quietly looking around with contemplative expressions. Before even officially stepping onto Singaporean soil, we had already seen and felt so much. Those few hours at the airport that night had a tremendous impact on all of us. At that moment, we didn't know how the next 24 hours would change our lives. Around 8 a.m., the airline announced that a city tour bus for Singapore had been prepared. Those who wished to participate could join. The students all said they wanted to go. After all, it would be a shame to just stay at the airport. On the bus, the tour guide was a man in his 50s. He greeted us in Russian. Although it was just simple phrases, hearing welcome in our own language made everyone feel much better. He said he would explain in English and picked up the microphone. He mentioned it would take about an hour to reach the city center. As the bus departed, the scenery of the expressway unfolded outside the window. The roads were truly clean. Not a single piece of litter could be seen on the median. The lane markings were also very clear, and traffic flowed in an orderly manner, with vehicles moving continuously but almost no honking heard. I recalled the road to the airport in Moscow, with its potholes, chaotic driving, and incessant honking. But here, there was almost no honking. Entering the city center, tall buildings began to appear. Skyscrapers stretched along the neat streets. The tour guide explained, "That building over there is the City Hall, and that area is the famous Orchard Road shopping belt." The first destination was the Buddha Tooth Relic Temple. Stepping off the bus in front of the temple, the students gasped in awe. The majestic temple gate and intricate carvings gleamed under the sunlight. Hearing that it was an approximately 300-year-old architectural marvel made it even more moving. Stepping inside, a courtyard filled with incense smoke came into view. The stone-paved ground conveyed a sense of history. The dragon carvings on the stone pillars and the gracefully curved roofs were beautiful. The students began taking photos. But what was even more impressive was the state of preservation. A centuries-old building maintained so immaculately, the courtyard was neat and solemn, and the architectural decorations showed signs of meticulous restoration. Seeing tourists dressed in traditional attire like Peranakan kebayas, we learned that traditional costumes could be rented. Several students expressed interest in trying them on, but due to time constraints, we had to postpone it to another occasion. Leaving the temple, we headed to a place called Haji Lane. We heard it was an area that retained the old-world charm of Singapore. Stepping off the bus and walking down the street, We saw rows of red brick shophouses and traditional Malay architecture. The rows of houses were long, and the shops had wooden facades. Although it was an old neighborhood, it was extremely well maintained. The street was clean, and there were no graffiti on the walls. Turning a corner, a creative cafe appeared. It seemed to have been renovated from an old house, retaining its traditional architectural exterior, while the interior was very modern. Through the windows, people could be seen sipping tea and chatting. The tour guide explained that Singapore has many such places, preserving old things while integrating them into modern life. This was a way of not discarding tradition but harmoniously coexisting with new things. Walking to the nearby jetty, the view of the Singapore River came into sight. Behind the ancient rooftops, modern skyscrapers rose. Old and new were framed together in a single picture. The students captured this scene with their cameras. At lunchtime, we went to a restaurant to enjoy a local Singaporean meal. Stepping into the restaurant, the environment was clean. Although every table was full of customers, it was not noisy. The food was served. It was Hainanese chicken rice with fragrant rice and tender poached chicken. It was accompanied by braised egg, green vegetables, and soup. The colors were truly beautiful. The amber chicken, green vegetables, and yellow pickled radish were harmoniously matched. The waiter showed us how to eat it, gesturing that we could mix it or eat it together. The students followed suit, and although it was their first time trying this dish, it seemed delicious. Everyone quietly focused on their meal. When paying the bill, I was surprised by the price. It only cost about SGD 300 for 25 people. Converted to Russian currency, it would be about 10,000 rubles. In a similar restaurant in Moscow, it would cost at least double. After the meal, we headed to Bugis Street, reportedly a shopping district for young people. As soon as we got off the bus, there was a crowd, but it felt more vibrant than crowded. Walking through the pedestrian zone, the streets were really wide. Even with many people, it was easy to walk. The paving stones were flat, making walking comfortable. The signboards were dazzling, yet there was a beauty of order amidst the chaos. Seeing many beauty stores, the students showed interest and decided to go into one. The store assistants greeted us with bright smiles. The products were neatly displayed. Face masks and samples were abundant. The assistants kindly explained in English, recommending products suitable for different skin types and detailing their usage. One student mentioned concerns about teenage acne, and the assistant recommended a suitable product. What was impressive was that they didn't push expensive products but rather selected what was truly needed. The prices were also very reasonable, much cheaper than buying in Moscow. Plus, with duty-free benefits, it was even more affordable. Each student bought several items. When checking out, the assistants even gave us sample packets. Although it was a small, thoughtful gesture, the students loved it, as stores in Russia rarely give out samples. Back on the street, we continued walking and saw many street food stalls. We stopped at a place selling kue tutu. The sweet aroma stimulated our noses. Each of us bought one. The pastry had a crispy exterior, filled with rich cream or red bean paste. The students said it was delicious, and bought a few more. One only cost about SGD 1.5, a snack that was both cheap and tasty. Time flew by, and the sun began to set. It was time to return to the bus. The students were all reluctant, with expressions that wished to explore more. On the bus back to the airport, the students were very quiet. It wasn't because they were tired, rather, they seemed to be contemplating what they had seen and heard. Outside the window, the scenery of Singapore flashed by. Although it was a short tour of only a few hours, we had truly seen and experienced so much. Clean streets, orderly people, friendly vendors, and a city where new and old harmoniously coexisted. All of this left a deep impression. We arrived back at the airport around 7 p.m. The students rested in the lounge, each spending their time individually. Some read books, others used their phones to organize photos. After 10 p.m., most people were asleep, but I couldn't sleep. The sights of the day kept replaying in my mind. I walked out of the resting area and began strolling inside the airport. It was past 11 p.m., and the airport was still bright and clean. Cleaning staff were quietly working. Duty-free shops were still open. Even late at night, everything was operating normally. I walked for quite a while and then discovered a passage leading to another terminal. Out of curiosity, I followed it. The passage was really long. I walked slowly, observing my surroundings. Along the walls of the passage, there were exhibits showcasing Singaporean culture, such as paintings of historic neighborhoods, models of traditional architecture, or Peranakan artifacts displayed in glass cases. Even at night, the lights were on, and everything was clearly visible. I arrived at another terminal. This place was also as clean and bright as the first. Checking my watch, it was past 1 in the morning. I saw a brightly lit convenience store and decided to go in. The automatic doors opened, and a cool breeze greeted me. Inside the store, there was only one young female assistant, who looked to be in her early 20s. Even in the early hours, she showed no signs of fatigue. Instead, she was arranging items on the shelves and humming a song. As I entered, she looked up and cheerfully greeted me. This was certainly a sight unimaginable in Russia. After midnight, a young woman tending a convenience store alone was an inconceivable notion. I looked around the store. The products were truly diverse. There were dozens of types of instant noodles alone. There were also many kinds of ready-to-eat meals. The beverage refrigerators were fully stocked, and biscuits and bread filled the shelves. There were many fresh products. There was a pot of steaming tea eggs, and also Odin-style food. I picked up a tea egg and looked at the price tag. The price was clearly marked, and the expiration date was also clearly indicated. In the corner, there was a self-service coffee machine. I pressed the button, the machine operated, and coffee came out. The price was SGD 2.5. I took it to the counter, and the assistant skillfully processed the payment. She pointed to the terminal, indicating I could tap my Easy Link card or credit card. The payment was completed simply. I asked her in English, "Aren't you afraid working alone?" The assistant smiled and shook her head, saying she wasn't afraid at all. Airport security patrols constantly, and there's also an emergency button, so it's very safe. She said she had been working night shifts for 5 years and had never encountered any problems. On the contrary, she smiled and said she enjoyed working at night because it was quiet, easy to get things done, and there were fewer customers, so it was more relaxed. Hearing this, a pang of sadness went through me, because this was a story unimaginable in Russia. In Moscow, it is extremely dangerous for young women to work alone at night. Stepping out of the convenience store, I sat on a bench in the airport, drinking coffee, and lost in thought. What is safety? Is it safety only when there is no crime? Or is it safety when systems work well, allowing people to live without fear? Singapore is the latter. Even in the early hours, women can work alone, and citizens can freely walk the streets. How many conditions are needed to build such a society? I checked my watch. It was 1 in the morning. I decided to return to the resting area. Walking through the passage, I again met a cleaning staff member. He was a man who looked to be in his 60 seconds, meticulously cleaning every corner with a new mop. As I passed, he paused, stepped aside, and smiled as he bowed his head in greeting. His demeanor left a lasting impression on me, because I could feel that even in his cleaning job, he was filled with pride. It was evident that he truly valued his work. Back in the resting area, the students were all asleep. I gently lay down but couldn't easily fall asleep. The image of the young assistant in the convenience store working fearlessly in the early hours kept replaying in my mind, her composed, smiling face. I was amazed that such a society was possible. Could we create such an environment for our students in Russia? A society where one can go out safely at night, where women can work without fear. With these thoughts, I drifted off to sleep. I woke up at 7 a.m. Several students were already awake. They suggested we walk around the airport to pass the time. We went out together. The weather outside the airport was fresh and cool, and the sky was blue. One student remarked, "The air here is different. It's much easier to breathe than in Moscow." We had breakfast at an airport restaurant. It was a buffet with various types of porridge, side dishes, and buns. The students found it interesting and added various dishes. After breakfast, an airline staff member came to find us, saying that we would likely be able to depart that afternoon. Before that, there was still time, and if we wished, we could visit East Coast Park. The students were thrilled. I was also curious about this place in Singapore. The tour guide yesterday mentioned it was a popular spot for locals. It took about 30 minutes from the airport to East Coast Park. The bus entered a coastal road, and the wide expanse of water came into view. Tall buildings lined both sides of the river, and the park was built along the coastline. After getting off the bus, an open space unfolded before us. A cool sea breeze blew, and the students cheered. Entering the park, the cycling paths and walking paths were clearly separated. Lines were drawn on the ground, making everything clear. People were walking or jogging, and there were also many cyclists. What was astonishing was that exercise equipment was installed along the coastline. We were told it was all free to use. Pull-up bars, treadmills, stretching equipment, everything was available. An elderly man was using the exercise equipment. He looked to be over 70, but his movements were agile. He was doing pull-ups on the bar. One student walked over and asked, "Do you come here every day, sir?" The old man nodded and said, "I've been exercising here for 20 years. He smiled and added, "Thanks to this, I'm very healthy." The concept of public exercise equipment was very new. In Russia, to exercise you have to pay to go to a gym. 5,000 rubles a month is standard. But here, anyone could exercise for free. Walking a bit further, a restroom appeared. It was a public toilet. Several students said they wanted to go in and see. I followed them. I was shocked. A park restroom could be so clean. The floor was dry, and the toilets were sparkling. Toilet paper was abundant, and the wash basins even had soap and paper towels. There was almost no unpleasant odor. The ventilation system worked well. A cleaning schedule was posted on the wall, stating that it was cleaned every 2 hours. I remembered the restrooms in Moscow parks. The doors wouldn't lock, there was never any toilet paper, and the stench was terrible. So, when I went to a park, I always tried to avoid using the restroom. But here, there was no need for that at all. It was truly amazing how well public restrooms were managed. Stepping out, I sat on a bench. The river water sparkled under the sunlight. People were peacefully spending their time. A family had spread a mat and was having a picnic. 2 children and their parents. The children laughed and played, while the parents chatted leisurely. On the other side, an elderly couple was strolling, holding hands and walking slowly, creating a heartwarming scene. Sitting on the bench, looking at the river, and then I started walking again. I also saw many young women, some jogging, some cycling. Some were alone, others with friends. They all looked very free and comfortable. One student whispered, "It's really safe here." A girl walking alone doesn't look dangerous at all. Indeed, CCTV cameras were installed throughout the park, and patrolling security guards could also be seen. But more importantly, it was the atmosphere itself. One could feel that people respected and understood each other. Rubbish bins were also clearly visible, placed at regular intervals. Moreover, they were designed for waste segregation. General waste, recyclables, bottles, and cans were all separated. What was astonishing was that people actually adhered to the segregation. A man finished his drink, separated the bottle and cap, and threw them into different bins, naturally and as a matter of course. In Moscow parks, it's hard to find rubbish bins, and they often overflow, with people frequently littering. But here, everything was systematically managed, and people followed that system. After about an hour of exploring the park, we returned to the bus. The students' faces were bright. They looked like they had had a wonderful time. On the bus, one student said, "Seeing how well the park is managed, I think I understand how much this country cares about its citizens." He said that creating public spaces isn't just about money. Exactly. A heart that cares for its citizens, a culture that cherishes public property, an attitude that pays attention to every small detail. All of these combined create such spaces. On the way back to the airport, the scenery of Singapore flashed by outside the window. Although it was a short period of less than 24 hours, we truly saw and felt so much. Chapter 5. Discoveries in Bugis Street. We arrived at the airport around 1 p.m. There were still 4 hours until departure. The students said they wanted to do some last-minute shopping. We decided to explore the airport's duty-free shops. As soon as we entered the duty-free area, the cosmetics counters were the first to catch our eyes. Numerous global brands were displayed. The students showed interest, as these were also famous brands in Russia. We entered one shop. The staff greeted us with bright smiles. The students started trying various products. The staff kindly explained in English, selecting products suitable for different skin types and detailing their usage. One student mentioned concerns about teenage acne, and the assistant recommended a suitable product. What was impressive was that they didn't push expensive products, but rather selected what was truly needed. The prices were also very reasonable, much cheaper than buying in Moscow. Plus, with duty-free benefits, it was even more affordable. Each student bought several items. When checking out, the assistants even gave us sample packets. Although it was a small, thoughtful gesture, the students loved it, as stores in Russia rarely give out samples. Going upstairs, we saw an area selling traditional handicrafts. Upon entering, items such as exquisitely crafted glass art, Peranakan ceramics, and decorative ornaments were displayed. Each piece was meticulously detailed. A ceramic tea set caught my eye. It was an intricately crafted tea set with delicate floral patterns. The patterns were truly detailed. Looking at the price tag, it was SGD 200. I thought it was a bit expensive, but the staff explained that it was a piece handcrafted by an artisan, painted and fired over a month. They mentioned that the work of coloring and controlling the firing temperature was truly difficult. Hearing this, I no longer thought the price was expensive, as it was a piece that embodied a month of labor and skill. Russia also has traditional handicrafts, but it's rare to see such exquisite pieces. When the time came, after checking in and dropping off our luggage, we proceeded to the departure hall. The students had wistful expressions. During immigration checks, the officer smiled and asked, "How was Singapore?" The students replied, "It was truly wonderful." The officer smiled brightly and said, "Welcome back, anytime." While waiting for the plane at the boarding gate, I chatted with the students. Everyone said that even though the time was short, they had seen so many things. In particular, several mentioned the friendliness of the people. One student shared a memorable incident. When asking for directions in Bugis Street, an uncle, though not very fluent in English, specifically opened his smartphone to use a translation app to help. She felt his willingness to take the time to assist foreigners. She said it was truly touching. Another student recounted an experience at a restaurant. When eating Hainanese chicken rice, she found it so delicious that she wanted to ask for more sauce. The staff immediately helped and also kindly advised to try it with chili sauce. Small acts of thoughtfulness accumulate into profound gandong. This phrase left a deep impression. Boarding time arrived. We got on the plane and settled into our seats, looking out the window. We saw the airport buildings, and in the distance, the skyscrapers of Singapore City. This was a country we unexpectedly visited for less than 24 hours due to an emergency landing. But this brief period had a tremendous impact on us. The plane took off. Singaporean land gradually receded. The students looked out the window with lingering regret. The student next to me whispered, "I definitely want to come back again. Next time, I want to travel properly." The other students also nodded. It took 8 hours to reach Moscow. On the plane, the students looked at photos, chatted, shared selfies, and reminisced about memorable moments. I also slowly flipped through the photos on my phone. The clean airport floor, the bright lights of the convenience store at midnight, the leisurely people in East Coast Park, the vibrant scene of Bugis Street. Each photo evoked memories. Then I thought about how to share this experience with the Russian people. The students' transformation was evident. Their eyes were different from when they departed. Their perspective on the world also seemed to have broadened. They had personally seen that a better society was possible. Chapter 6. Experiencing Digital Infrastructure. We arrived in Moscow around 10 p.m. After leaving the airport, I handed the students over to their parents. How was the trip? The students excitedly recounted stories about Singapore. The emergency landing, the tour of Singapore, what they saw and felt, they spoke with eagerness. The parents' expressions shifted from surprise to astonishment. Back home, lying in bed, I couldn't sleep. My time in Singapore kept replaying in my mind. What was particularly impressive was the digital infrastructure. The metro had seamless network coverage. The entire airport offered free Wi-Fi. All information was updated in real time via digital screens. Moscow was different. Metro network was patchy. Public Wi-Fi was slow or often non-existent. But in Singapore, you could connect anywhere. The airport, metro, buses, even parks. The internet was fast. The students were able to send photos to their families promptly because of this. The next day, I went to work at school. As soon as I entered the staff room, colleagues gathered around, expressing concern upon hearing about the emergency landing. I said it was fine. On the contrary, it was a very good experience. I told them about Singapore. The teachers showed interest. During break time, I saw the students. They were telling their friends stories about Singapore, explaining with great enthusiasm. A few days later, a student came to me, saying she wanted to upload a travelogue about Singapore to social media and asked for permission. I encouraged her, saying it was a good idea. About a week later, the student came back to me, looking excited. She said her post had received a huge response. She showed me her smartphone. The views exceeded 500,000, and there were thousands of comments. Most of them expressed surprise. Other students also independently posted articles on social media, sharing photos and videos. The reactions were similar. Most of the content was about how they didn't know Singapore was such a place. In particular, the video of the street at midnight became a hot topic. A woman working alone in a convenience store at 3 in the morning and people jogging in the park seemed to be very impactful. For Russians, these were unimaginable scenes. The comments were full of admiration and questions, asking, "Is it really that safe? Are they exaggerating?" About a month later, major Russian media outlets contacted me, requesting an interview. The content was that the students' Singapore experience had become a talking point, and they wanted to hear the story directly. I accepted the interview. The reporter asked many questions. What was my first impression of Singapore? What surprised me the most? What were the differences compared to Russia? I answered honestly. I said that the safety system, the accuracy of the systems, and the friendliness of the people were all very impressive. I particularly emphasized that the standard of public infrastructure was very high. After the report was published, the school received a large number of inquiries. Parents called asking, "Can our children also go to Singapore for the next school trip?" I discussed it with the principal. Since many parents were requesting it, we considered making Singapore a regular destination for school trips. The principal was also very positive. Changes also occurred among the students. The number of students wanting to learn Mandarin increased. Petitions asking the school to offer Mandarin classes came in. More students became interested in Singaporean culture. Some students started watching Singaporean dramas and listening to Mandarin pop music. In the staff meeting, I chatted with my colleagues and remarked how astonishing it was that a brief experience could have such a profound impact on the students. Indeed, reading 10,000 books is not as good as traveling 10,000 miles. The students personally experienced Singapore. That experience changed their mindset. Chapter 7. Explosive reaction after returning home. About 2 months later, the school welcomed a special guest. It was an official from the Russian Ministry of Education. Having heard about the Singapore school trip, he personally came to visit the school. A meeting was held in the principal's office. I was also present. The Ministry of Education official asked, "Did the students really change that much? Is Singapore truly such a wonderful place?" I answered truthfully. Although it was a short period of less than 24 hours, it provided immense inspiration to the students. The experience of seeing firsthand that a better society is possible was very important. The Ministry of Education official nodded and took notes, saying that other schools were also very interested in Singapore. He mentioned that the government was reviewing plans to expand educational exchanges with Singapore. The students' social media posts continued to spread, with views exceeding millions. Other media outlets began to repost them. One student uploaded a video to YouTube. It was a compilation of videos shot in Singapore. The title was, "Reasons Why My Worldview Changed in 24 Hours." The video spread by word of mouth. Views exceeded 1 million. The comment section became a discussion forum. Why can't Russia do this? What should we learn? Such content was exchanged back and forth. In parent meetings, Singapore was also a topic of conversation. One mother told me, "My daughter completely changed after her trip to Singapore. She used to have no interest in studying, but now she actively learns. She said she has a goal of attending a university in Singapore and is working hard to learn Mandarin." Other parents shared similar stories. "My son is fascinated by Singaporean culture, watches Singaporean dramas, listens to music, and even wants to learn Singaporean cooking." They expressed gratitude, saying it was a positive change. 3 months later, the school officially decided on the Singapore school trip. It was decided that students would be sent regularly, starting next year. Applications poured in. For 50 spots, over 200 applied, with a competition rate of more than 4 to 1. A lottery had to be held. The students who were not selected were very disappointed. Seeing their determination to definitely go next time, I was very pleased. The Singapore representative office in Moscow also contacted us, saying they welcomed students to visit Singapore and promised support, saying they would assist with visas and local tours. The school also opened Mandarin classes. It was decided that they would be held twice a week after school. Over 100 students applied, so they had to be divided into 2 classes. To invite a Mandarin teacher, we requested assistance from the representative office. A volunteer teacher was sent. She was an overseas Singaporean teacher. On the first day of class, the classroom was packed with students. Their eyes sparkled, and their enthusiasm to learn Mandarin was very high. The teacher began teaching Pinyin and Chinese characters. The students wrote along, finding it interesting and practicing. They marveled at the explanation of the beauty and profound meaning of simplified Chinese characters. A Singaporean culture club was also established, organized spontaneously by the students. They planned various activities such as making Singaporean food, experiencing traditional crafts, and watching movies. At the first meeting, they made bubble tea. We heard they went to great lengths to buy the ingredients, because tapioca pearls are not easy to find in Moscow. They said they bought the ingredients from Asian food stores. Although their skills in making tapioca pearls were unrefined, the students were very happy. While drinking the bubble tea they made themselves, they reminisced about their memories in Singapore. Other schools also showed interest. Some schools, having heard about our school's case, said they wanted to benchmark and visited. The principal shared our experience, explaining how much inspiration the Singapore school trip had given the students. Other schools also began considering visiting Singapore. Chapter 8. The Wave of Change a year later. A year has passed. During this time, many changes have occurred. The biggest change was the students' attitudes. The 25 students who went to Singapore became role models for the school, demonstrating diligence in their studies, adherence to rules, and consideration for others. One student actually gained admission to a university in Singapore. It was a prestigious university in Singapore, and she also received a scholarship. The entire school congratulated her. That student advised her juniors, saying that what she saw in Singapore became her motivation, creating a dream of wanting to live in a better society. To achieve that dream, she worked hard. Other students also had their own goals. There were students who wanted to work for Singaporean companies, students who wanted to become Mandarin interpreters, and students who wanted to research multi-ethnic culture. The second Singapore school trip was held. This time it was a week-long itinerary. 50 students participated. They not only visited Singapore but also explored other places like Sentosa Island and Gardens by the Bay. After returning, the students once again conveyed their gandom, saying they had seen many diverse facets of Singapore and were very excited. Mandarin classes were incorporated into the regular curriculum. Although it was an elective, it was always full each semester, and even increased to 3 classes. The students' Mandarin proficiency also improved. They could engage in simple conversations, write letters in simplified Chinese, and sing Mandarin songs. During the school festival, a Singaporean culture booth was set up. The students prepared activities such as trying on traditional costumes, tasting Singaporean snacks, and experiencing night market games. The response was extremely enthusiastic. Other students also began to show interest in Singapore. Even if they hadn't personally been there, hearing their friends' stories made them curious. Parents' perceptions also changed. Initially, they didn't know much about Singapore, but now they wanted to send their children to Singapore. Again, in a parent meeting, I heard such remarks: "We didn't know Singapore was such a developed place. We overlooked it because of its small size, but in reality, it's a place where there's much to learn." The Ministry of Education decided to formally expand exchanges with Singapore. They formulated a plan to support schools across Russia in visiting Singapore. Our school became a model case. Teachers from other schools came to benchmark, and we shared our experiences. I personally also underwent changes. I began to research Singapore more deeply. I read and learned about its history, culture, and economic development process. I was curious how Singapore had developed so rapidly in such a short time, transforming from a difficult situation into a technology island. I was surprised to realize the immense power of education. Singaporeans value learning and invest in the next generation. That is what created today's Singapore. I passed that experience on to the students, telling them that Singapore is special not by nature, but as a result of effort, planning, and implementation. The students nodded. Therefore, they said they wanted to learn more, saying they wanted to become like Singapore. On the last day of the semester, the principal spoke. He said that over the past year, the school had undergone tremendous changes. The connection with Singapore had planted new dreams in the students. The students gathered in the auditorium applauded. The faces of the students who had been to Singapore glowed with smiles. That afternoon in the staff room, I drank coffee and looked out the window. I recalled the emergency landing a year ago. Although it was an accident, it was a blessing. The brief 24-hour experience changed the lives of 25 people, changed the entire school. Furthermore, it showed Russian students new possibilities. A small coincidence created a massive change. I learned that one experience can become a lifelong inspiration. Now, the students still dream of Singapore, saying that one day they must go again, wanting to stay longer. To realize that dream, they are working hard to study. This has been the most meaningful experience in my teaching career, because there is nothing more valuable than showing students a new world. That's all for today's story. The story of how a 24-hour emergency landing changed the lives of Russian students. What do you think? Please leave encouraging comments for the protagonist of the story. This concludes the story brought to you by Emotion Station. If you liked this story, please hit like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.